So first of all, thank you for accepting our paper at the SCN conference, and I hope everyone are well despite of the COVID-19 thing. Okay, so my name is Thomas and I'll present the fast threshold ECDSA with honors majority. This is joint work with Damgård, Jesper Nielsen, Jakob, Pagterand and Michael Østergaard. So before we start, I'll just briefly recap the ECDSA signature scheme. So this is basically signatures over an elliptic curve in set P, where P is a prime. And as part of the public parameters, we have this generator G, which generates a group of order Q, where Q is a prime, and this group is a subset of the elliptic curve. So in order to generate a key pair, one chooses a random private key in set Q, and to produce the public key, we raise the private key to the power of G. So when we later have to sign, we pick a random nonce K in set Q, and we compute capital R, which is G raised to the power of K. The signature is two values R and S, where the R value is capital R, which is on the curve, but we kind of project it down to the x-axis and reduce modulo Q. And the S value is K inverse times M plus Rx, where M is the message, or rather hash of the message, and X is the private key. So when we later want to verify a message M, given a signature, we compute this expression here, which depends on S and the message and the public key, and again we project down to the x-axis and compare to the R value. So this was ECDSA. As you probably know, ECDSA is widely used. It's used in the TLS and DNSSEC in order to secure internet communication, used by almost everyone every day. It's also used in cryptocurrencies, and here we have this kind of tricky property that if someone is able to forge a signature, that amounts directly to loss of money. So if you have bitcoins, your ability to produce signatures using your key is the way that you spend your money. And here on the right, I just included a table that I got from the internet, where someone tried to summarize the total amount of money affected by hacks in cryptocurrency exchanges in recent years. And this amount of money here, if you compare to the amount of money that has actually existed in cryptocurrencies, this is quite a big fraction. So what we can see here is that there is obviously a need to add additional security to cryptocurrency exchanges, and in other words, we need an additional layer of security. So one such additional layer of security could be to add threshold security. In the case of ECDSA, what does threshold security mean? Well, it means that we take the private key X and now we split it up in a secret sharing, such that each of, for instance, 3 servers holds its own share of the key. And now if a client here comes with the message M, the 3 parties here, the 3 servers, they use secure multi-party computation in order to first compute a secret sharing of the nonce inverse. Remember that this is also quite sensitive in the ECDSA scheme. They also compute and open this value capital R, which means that they have to raise to put this K sharing up in the exponent here. And now the servers also together compute a sharing of the private key X times the nonce inverse. Once they've done that, a sharing of this signature value S can be computed by doing linear operations on these 2 sharings here. And for those of you who know Bitcoin multi-signatures, I just want to point out that this threshold ECDSA should not be confused with the Bitcoin multi-signature scheme. So Bitcoin multi-signatures try to achieve kind of the same threshold security, but it's by different means, and it actually has some drawbacks, a much larger blockchain and so on. Okay, so let's look at the previous work. Of course, we have the generic results from the 80s that says that anything can be computed in MCC. So of course we can compute ECDSA signatures, but it has been up till now generally believed that this was not very efficient. Then in '96, Gennaro and others came up with a solution for honest majority based on error correcting codes. I use short references here. I promise I'll include all the full references in the last slide. Okay, so that was for honest majority. Then in 2001, Mackenzie and Reiter, they came with a two-party solution for threshold ECDSA. And then in 2016, and from that point on, there has been kind of an explosion of results for ECDSA signatures in threshold. And all of these solutions here, they're in the dishonest majority setting. And some of the recent are actually pretty efficient. And all of them kind of try to, I mean, if we go back and look here, we can see that unlike, for instance, RSA signatures and ECDSA signatures, this is kind of heavy work. There has to be some multiplication of secret shares, and it's also a bit annoying that we both need the K inverse here, and then we also need to use just K here when we open the R capital. So there has to be some MPC work going on, and all of these results here, they try to do this as efficient as possible. For instance, they usually, for doing the MPC multiplication, they either use the Gilbert's trick for doing MPC multiplication based on OT, and then they get efficiency because there has been such a huge advance in the efficiency of OT extension. Another approach is to use homomorphic encryption, usually Payet encryption, and then in any case, there's a lot of clever tricks here in order to avoid expensive zero-knowledge proofs. So the question is whether the case of honest majority that was done by Gennaro here in '96 settles completely the case for honest majority. Is there anything to be done? And the answer, of course, is yes, there is. We have some improvements. We have another solution which has some nice features. But before I explain our solution, I would like to just explain a few nice properties that has gained focus recently. One of them is what we could call non-interactive online signing. So, as I said before, it's hard to do ECDSA in threshold without some communication between the servers. But it turns out that a lot of the hard work can be pushed to an offline phase, which can be run at a point in time where the message to sign is not known. So we can split up the signing in a pre-signature phase here, where the three servers, 3 is just an example, but where the servers here, they produce what we call a pre-signature. This is the value R, the sharing of K inverse, and the sharing of X times K inverse. This requires secure multi-party computation interaction between the servers, but once that's done, in the online phase, when the message is known, it can just be sent to each server here, and they, without communication, they can compute a sharing of the signature S, and we can see from the formula here that this only can be done only by using linear computation on the sharings that they got from the pre-signature phase. So they can each just output a partial signature, which then can be recombined to the signature here. And this is of course nice, but it's especially nice in the context of cryptocurrencies, because there, apart from throwing a threshold security in as an additional layer of security, another way to enhance security is to sometimes store the sensitive data in a cold storage. That means, for instance, a hardware security module or even a bank box. And in that case, it's very nice that we can have this non-interactivity where the message just goes to the bank box, and then out comes the partial signature without a lot of rounds. We don't have to go back and forth to the bank box several times. So this is a feature that has actually like driven by the recent usage of threshold signatures in the cryptocurrency community turned out to be useful in practice. So another feature that has gained focus recently is that of Identifiable Abort. It turns out that in the cryptocurrency community there has been some recent attempts at creating so-called like bridges between different cryptocurrencies. So the details are not relevant here, but think of it as kind of a magic box where you can put in bitcoins and out comes another kind of coin on a different blockchain, for instance Ethereum coins. This is very nice to have, but it turns out these solutions, they require a central authority to have to hold an account with a lot of bitcoins, for instance. And this kind of goes against the intent in Bitcoin to kind of have decentralized trust. We don't want to have a central authority, and it has been proposed to remedy this by using a threshold signature scheme to keep those bitcoins. But this means that in order to have a good threshold, we need a very large number of parties. This was actually tried out by the Keep network. They have a nice white paper here where they document this. And they stumbled upon this issue that using the existing efficient solutions for dishonest majority, we really need Identifiable Abort. None of these solutions have Identifiable Abort. And the problem is that if, for instance, there are 500 parties and we want only 200 of those to be able to produce a signature, then with the existing solutions, if there's just a single malicious party, he may cause the whole computation to abort. And the problem is, without Identifiable Abort, nobody can say who was the bad guy that caused this to abort. And then of course we can try again picking another 200 parties, but it's pretty probable that there's just a single malicious party there. So with Identifiable Abort we can kind of identify this guy and throw him away. So a final thing is the question about fairness and guaranteed output delivery. But because even if we could add Identifiable Abort to the existing solutions for dishonest majority, then we could ask, is it really okay that the computation might abort? And in that case, it might be the case that only the adversary got the signature and none of the honest parties got it. In some cases it's perfectly okay, but in other cases it's not that trivial, especially if the system is used as just a component in a larger, more complex system. Like, imagine that just being in possession of a valid signature allows you to withdraw some money, and then suddenly it's not so good if the adversary holds several of those without anyone else holding these. So another question is whether it's okay that we can abort at all. I mean, it's annoying and it just sucks out resources from the system. The only existing result that really addresses full security with fairness and guaranteed output delivery is that of Gennaro from '96. So now we turn to our result. So our initial business requirements were that our customer, he wanted to do 3-party computation with malicious security. There had to be a really high performance, a high throughput, and there was a focus on the need for a really good proof of security. On the other hand, there wasn't really a need for a dishonest majority. 3 parties with honest majority with abort was no problem. So we looked at this result from '96 with full security. It's based, as I said, on error correcting codes, but it has this property that the number of parties n has to be larger than or equal 4t plus 1, where t is the threshold. And this means that if we set t to 1, then we need at least 5 parties, and we had to do 3-party computation. There's also another solution sketched in their paper. It works for only 3t plus 1, so it can run with 4 parties. There's no proof, and it has this drawback that the online requires several rounds of communication. So they don't talk much about that, but actually implicitly in their work, if we take this solution based on commitments, we can run with 3 parties, which gives abort. But in that case, because of the use of Peterson commitments and other things, there are quite a lot of work. In particular, if we run with 3 parties, we need 35 long curve multiplications. So, in order to run with just 3 parties, we came up with our own solution, which works for 2t plus 1. That means that we can run with 3 parties, and a threshold is 1 with abort. And we came up with a new trick in order to check the multiplications, the NPC multiplications, and our trick is simple and efficient, but it reveals one of the factors raised, or g raised to one of the factors. But it turns out that this is perfectly okay when we use this in ECDSA, because there it is part of the protocol to actually reveal one of the factors in the exponent. Okay, so we came up with 2 solutions. The first one is very fast. There are no Peterson commitments. It works for 3 parties. In that case, it only requires 6 long curve multiplications, which is 17% of what is used in the Gennaro solution from '96. Also, there is a full UC proof. In fact, it's a perfect UC security, and there are no additional assumptions, except of course from assuming that ECDSA is secure. We also did a second version, kind of an extended version, where we do a little more work in the offline phase. We throw in some Peterson commitments, and what we get is that we get non-interactivity in the online phase, and also we get this very best thing, namely guaranteed output delivery. This means that any t plus 1 parties are guaranteed to be able to get the signature. It turns out that we are not entirely the only one thinking about this. In fact, our result and the 2 results here, they popped up on ePrint within like 24 hours, and this result followed just a few days after. And these 3 results here are for a dishonest majority, but basically they do like us. They take existing solution, some existing solutions, and they kind of update those solutions in order to get identifiable abort, non-interactive online, and identifiable, fairness and stuff. So, for instance, this one by Jakobsen and others, it actually requires several rounds online, but once that's, but on the other hand, it achieves online identifiable abort, and even given broadcast, guaranteed output delivery online. So this result by Canetti and others achieves this non-interactive online phase and other nice features such as proactive security, but it doesn't have identifiable abort. Gennaro and Goldfeeder here, they actually have both non-interactive online and identifiable abort, but still there's no notion of fairness. A single party can still make the whole thing abort. Then, apart from these results, there's been a different line of work here, where people have been looking at how can we use general MPC, and it turns out that they discovered that at least for MPC over large fields, it's pretty simple to make it work. Of course, it's still kind of a downside that we have to pull in a complex system for general MPC, but on the other hand, this is very flexible. We can actually, with these solutions, we can plug and play different systems for general MPC, and in particular, if we plug in one of the most efficient systems for 3 parties with abort, honest majority, by Cheetah and others from 2018, we get a performance which is similar to ours. So that's pretty efficient. Okay, so now I want to continue giving a few more details about our solution. So this is our basic solution without fairness. We use secret sharing, and in particular, because we're allowed to abort, it's pretty easy to generate random sharings of an element and of a random element and random sharings of the zero element. We also have this PAU-open protocol where we take a sharing of a value and the generator g, and then the protocol outputs g raised to the value of x. So this is basically having everybody broadcast their share of x in the exponent, and we interpolate in the exponent, and then because we're in the honest majority setting, there's enough redundancy that we can actually ensure that this protocol either aborts or gives out the correct result. Then we also use the fact that given 2 degree t sharings of 2 values here, we can compute the product without communication, but with the degree 2t sharing. So our basic scheme looks like this. Key generation is pretty simple. We just generate the private key as a secret sharing, then we use the PAU-open to get the public key. Now when it comes to pre-signatures, we generate the nonce as a secret sharing again, and then we generate some values here used for re-randomizing sharings, and also a random value a. In the second round of the pre-signature phase, we use the PAU-open to produce the capital R, and then we use a Beaver's inversion trick in order to compute a sharing of the inverse of this nonce k. We do this by multiplying a with k and blind, or re-randomize the sharing with a zero sharing here. Then we open up the result, invert it, and then adjust the sharing of a so that it becomes the sharing of k inverse. This is a standard trick. The problem here is that it works, except that now where this is a degree 2t sharing, this w might not be the correct one if there's just a single malicious party. So our idea is to use this PAU-open once again. This time we use R as base instead of the generator G. So what this produces, recall that this is actually, it has correctness in it. So it produces capital W, which is actually R raised to the power of A, which can be used as an authenticator, so that in the exponent we can check that the small w is the correct value. Once that's done, online signing is simple. We have the sharings, we can produce this sharing without communication. This one we had from the pre-processing phase, and now we just have to do linear operations where we multiply the message here and add some blinding stuff here in order to not reveal anything when we open up the sharing of S. Again, this product here is not necessarily correct, but we can, in this case, we can use signature verification to check the result. We can prove that once the first multiplication here is correct, then it's safe to open up the sharing of S, even though it might not be correct. So we did some benchmarks. We tried to make the benchmarks as close to a real-world setup as possible, and this means that each of the MPC parties is actually represented by a load balancer and a number of workers connected to a central database. And then we are spinning up a lot of clients, and they use authenticated channels. And what we can see here from the benchmarks is that, especially if we batch benchmarks, we get a pretty high throughput, and we also see this almost linear grow here. So what we get is horizontal scalability. The more workers we add here, the higher throughput we get. So the final couple of slides, I would like to use them to say a bit about the extended protocol that we have, the one that actually gets guaranteed output delivery in the online phase. So the idea is to do a little bit extra work in the offline phase. In particular, we use Peterson commitments in the offline phase to produce the private key. And in the pre-signature phase, the idea is to do as before, to get this sharing of, it's a regular Shamir sharing of the nonce inverted. And the idea is to take that and this verifiable secret sharing of X and then turn it into a verifiable secret sharing of K inverse and a verifiable sharing of X times K inverse. If we can do that, then it's pretty simple in the online phase to compute a verifiable secret sharing of the signature value S. Again, as before, this can be done simply with linear operations. And that's all we need, because then any T+1 parties which are honest can actually see that the shares are honest and then recombine the sharing. So here is the extended scheme. Key generation works as before, except that we use verifiable Peterson secret sharing to generate the private key X. Now, in the pre-signature phase, round 1 and 2 works as before. In particular, that means that in round 3, everyone knows its share of K inverse. So what happens here, in addition to what happened before, is that each party creates a verifiable secret sharing of its share of K inverse. And the parties also use verifiable secret sharing to create a random verifiable secret sharing. Now, in the next round, they open up the difference between these verifiable secret sharings and this verifiable secret sharing. This reveals nothing because B is random, and also now in public the servers can check that these U values are all consistent with the degree T polynomial, and this in fact forces everyone, also the malicious party, to make this sharing of its K inverse share correct. So if this check goes through, we have a good sharing. We have good shares here, and then we can interpolate U from these UI shares and then use the value, which now equals K inverse minus B, to adjust the B sharing to get a verifiable secret sharing of K inverse. This was part of what we wanted. Now in the next round, the parties can create a sharing. Each can create a verifiable secret sharing of his share of the private key times his share of K inverse. They can do this because they have verifiable secret sharings of X and K inverse, and by using standard zero-knowledge proofs, because this is Peterson, verifiable Peterson secret shares. Now the final thing is, once we have those and they're proved to be correct, we can get what we want here just by using some publicly known Lagrange coefficients, which is a linear operation on what they have. So signing, as I explained before, is piece of cake. Once you have that, it's just linear operations on the verifiable secret sharings, and yeah, now we have the guaranteed output delivery feature. Yeah, that completes my presentation. Thank you for listening, and as I promised, here is all the references that I used in the presentation.